Welcome to another episode of High Output AI, where Elliot and Tom discuss all the tools and techniques that make AI happen.
Oh, it squirted me in the face. Oh, God.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Hey, mate. How we
Sante,
doing?
I'm doing very good. It is the end of another fantastic week, both on this channel and both in life. So I'm doing
That's
good.
good stuff, man. I see you've moved locations. You're in a different corner of your apartment.
Yeah, because it took me like 15 minutes every time to set up. Just for like, basically I wanted a plant in the background, and then someone gave me a compliment at work about my background. So I was like, why don't I just do it where everything already is? So here we are.
Fair call. What do we got now? We got a little Smurf board and we have a plant. I mean, you got a plant.
I got a plant. And then I got CRISPR Card, who's my favorite photographer above here. Yeah.
I remember that was your wallpaper at work for a number of years.
Yeah. It still is.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Good stuff, mate. Good stuff. Well,
None of this chit chat.
Yeah, none of this chit chat. We got more than enough to get through. But look, before we do, thanks to everybody who's subscribed, listening in the Discord, reaching out, doing all that good stuff. It's great to have you here. We hope you're enjoying it. If you haven't already, do subscribe, join the Discord. We're on there. We're posting more stuff. It's more than just Tom and I now, which is a shift in the right direction.
We have friends.
Yeah, it turns out that Elliot didn't realize that, Elliot being me, third person, didn't realize that Discord links expired unless you change the settings. So for roughly 90% of the time that we've had a Discord link in our video descriptions, they would not let people in. But I fixed that now.
We're professionals here at High Output AI.
Yeah, look, we're still learning. We're getting there.
Yeah, but come join. We post all the show notes in advance up there, so before the episode drops. We're also talking about a few things this week that some of our some of our community members have put in the show notes for us. So come join.
Good stuff. Well,
let's go.
Yeah, look,
Huge
absolutely
week.
Cracker of a week in terms of news and deals. So We're going to hold off on the papers this week. Let's try and do a little bit more of an academic episode next week. But I mean, look, if you are anybody who's anybody in the world of AI, you know that this week has been big for news. So we got to get stuck in.
Yep. And just on to the biggest of the big, GPT-4 is out. It's official. I sent Elliot a question, like a text on Tuesday being like, hey, any word of GPT-4 coming out? I heard there was like that rumor came out last week, and then like bang, it dropped. It's here and it looks pretty slick.
It sure does. It's, I mean, frustratingly, as I was preparing for this show, it turns out that a ton of the details that you would care about, like parameter count and all this sort of stuff, they're just not sharing. Which is a massive departure from even the semi-open nature of OpenAI that we've seen in the past. We'll get into that, but we've done the comparisons where we can, and we'll let the rest come out in the wash as it does. But I dug up an article that had compared what we knew about GPT-4 to what we've seen from GPT-3, and just to give a quick lowdown there. GPT-3, or more specifically 3.5, it could process up to 4,000 tokens, which is about 1,500 words, if I'm doing that math correctly. The newer GPT-4 comes in two variants, an 8K token and a 32K token variant. The 32K being roughly equivalent to 50 pages of text as its context. So we're kind of in the realm now where you could theoretically ingest a bunch of documentation from your company's handbook and have meaningful conversations about it. If it was 1,500 words in the past, that's maybe 5 pages at best.
Huge.
So that's a massive jump up.
Yeah, Microsoft was claiming that it has an 8 times larger context window than GPT-3 alone.
Yeah. And, obviously a big deal for a lot of enterprise applications. You can get some fun stuff happening with these short-form conversational type flows. Obviously, its training data is part of its corpus, regardless of being, tokens and the input. But there are limitations about how you can get it going. 50 pages, it's good. It's a massive step up and it's wildly impressive. But, if you thought, okay, I want to take the entire, I don't know, Toyota Hilux service manual and ingest that and then ask it how to fix my car, realistically speaking, that's going to be more than 50 pages. So we're making big strides, but I think there's still quite a ways to go. I don't know if more tokens is going to be the innovation in the purest sense, or if there's going to be some other form of ingestion or something smart that it learns how to do to, I guess, not just have to get bigger to get smarter.
Why are these tokens a bottleneck? Like, why is context a bottleneck? Because you think that you could almost just make it infinite.
Yeah, so the problem here is memory, and both training it and running it at inference time is that, the same way that a lot of these image models downsample images to try and make them more memory efficient.
Yeah.
The more tokens you have, the more weights you need on the input, the more weights you need in the first few stages, the larger your attention mechanism needs to be. So, you can imagine 50 pages of text. If you have to have an attention mechanism that pays attention to every word in 50 pages of text within the context of every other word in the 50 pages of text, that's a hell of a lot of data.
Yeah.
And so, we're scaling that up, but computationally, that becomes a pretty difficult task.
So is this a thing that OpenAI has made a decision saying we're going to limit it at this kind of 32K tokens, whereas it could theoretically do more, but the inference time would just be ridiculous. Inference time and cost would just be ridiculous.
I'd say so. There's probably also some practical limitations in terms of training time. That means that, if you were to double this again, in theory, and none of this really holds up as perfectly in the real world as this, but you could imagine potentially doubling the training time, if not more.
Yep.
And if they're wanting to train this, fine tune it, train it again, release it, get a bunch of feedback from the real world that it's racist, and then train it again, that all takes time. And if you double that, it just slows the speed at which you can churn these things out.
Yeah. But obviously as well, the next big iteration on this model of not only can it accept more context is it can now take both image and text in this time as well, which is massive. And and that's already it's already in ChatGPT. People are saying, I haven't been able to communicate with ChatGPT via image yet, but can now accept images too.
Yeah, there's some cool demos that I've seen floating around, including the ones on the GPT launch page, which is explain this image, or here's some, this one I find very bizarre. Here's some PNG images of an academic research paper. Can you please explain the paper to me? Converting a PDF to images and then feeding it into AI seems like the least efficient data transfer I can imagine. But it's cool, and it seems to be going well. Now, notably, the output is still just text. It's not generating images yet, but it can use them as its input. Yeah. And you can imagine this expanding to video and other forms of media going forward.
Yeah, and this is something I'm very excited about over the next 12 months, and we'll talk about it later in another piece as well, where there's multimodal data combined in some way to both improve the experience and improve the accuracy of the output. So it's exciting to see this as well, and who knows, when we're talking about GPT-5, we're going to be having voice. We're going to be having voice in. We're going to be having video in. What else are we going to be able to plug in to be able to communicate with this LLM?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's good. I've seen some other examples where you can now tell it to give shorter responses as well. Yeah.
You can verge it or change how creative you want it and things like that.
Yeah, which I think is super handy. Before anything you asked it, it would give you an essay back, and for a lot of scenarios that really wasn't optimal. So being able to say in as few words as possible, what's the answer to this question? I think is a huge step up and going to make a lot of interfaces a lot easier. I mentioned talking to a service chatbot with your bank, and every time you ask it a basic question, it produces 8 pages of response.
Yeah.
It'd be immensely frustrating.
No, it's going to be exciting to look back in 3 years' time and be like, remember that clunky UX feature that we used to have? Remember how we used to have to enter in your credit card detail every time and no one saved it ever? The equivalent of that now.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean,
let's-
the next thing is performance.
I'd like everyone to note that I am still smarter than GPT-4 according to the GRE quantitative metric. I beat GPT-4.
Well done, mate. Well done.
It crushed me on the qualitative though.
Well, you can imagine that's kind of what it's fine tuned for. So
Yeah.
and I mean, what's 169 out of 170? That's going to be hard to beat.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, for context, do you want to explain to people what the GRE is?
Yeah, so basically this performance is what they've gone and done is to benchmark performance. They've done two forms of benchmarking. One is across standard AI benchmarking metrics, and then another one is they went and got it to go and do a bunch of standardized testing in a variety of different spaces. So they've done everything like the SATs, which is the kind of university entrance exam for the US. They did the LSAT, which is for law school. They did the GRE, which is general masters. So you can use it to go to an MBA, or you could go do it in a Masters of Science or something like that. I don't think they did GMAT, which is the business school one, but then they did art history, biology, and things like that. And what they did is they compared GPT-4 to GPT 3.5 and also GPT-4 without any vision. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Elliot, but that's not the ability to ingest any image, is my understanding of it.
Yeah. So, when they turn that image mode on, a certain portion, I suppose, of the weights are going to have to be put aside to translate images into meaningful text representations. And that's going to limit your sort of pure text comprehension ability. It's like just, taking out a piece of its brain. And so turning that off means there's more space for just pure text-to-text translation, which most of these exams are going to be.
Yeah, so it's done really, really well on all of these. It outperformed GPT 3.5, and it is now performing at incredibly high levels for some tests. So, for example, the GRE qualitative, which is you kind of like have to think of, and obviously this is perfect for AI, but you have to think of words that could replace that word without changing the sentence, questions like that, or like if given a body of text, how true is this statement about that body of text? Kind of questions like that. It just absolutely crushed it in this with GPT-4. So it's a really good way to show like kind of where it is compared to like humans on a standardized test as well. And I think it's been able to demonstrate some good progress as well since 3.5. And what I find interesting is with vision, it generally outperforms no vision as well. So, which just is another thing that I'm probably going to keep mentioning throughout this episode, which is additional data context just seems to be a really, really exciting next step in the development of AI for me. And if you compare it against the other models, so they compared it, they kind of ranked it as like one summed up metric, but there's different tests. And GPT-4 is the best LLM out there at the moment. So they compared it to Chinchilla, they compared it to GPT 3.5, and I think they compared it to Palm, did they? Or no, not Palm. They compared it to another available metric, and it was the best by far. So, for example, it was hitting 80 percentage points on this, whereas Chinchilla was hitting 67 or something like that from memory.
Yeah,
so it's
really
performing well.
I also haven't had much of a chance to play around with it. Poe has a very limited access to GPT-4. I think you get like one prompt for free, which is really not enough to give it a full comprehensive go. But having premium access, I think, gives you chat interface, and obviously then there's the API, which is another interesting aspect here. So the cost for these APIs is, as with all API costing, a bit weird. So tokens get priced differently depending on whether they're just context tokens or tokens to signal the end of input. So you get charged per block of text, but also dependent on the length of text. So it's a little hard to compare exact pricing, but from what I've seen, GPT 3.5, 1,500 tokens, which is about its limit, it's about $400.
Wow.
And GPT-4 for the 8K is 7.5 grand, and for the 15K, and for the 32K, it's about 15 grand.
Wow.
To go through and basically just, I mean, it's more usage than most normal people are going to use. You're not going to use 15 grand worth of ingestion. But it's more expensive is the point by quite a significant margin. And that's, look, not surprising. It's better, it's newer, and it's going to take more compute to get it out there. So I'm not surprised. It's still, in the grand scheme of things, is probably fairly reasonable. And I would imagine a lot of companies that were thinking of rolling their own LLM are probably not going to bother anymore because this is cheap enough that that's not worth doing in most cases.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting to see that there's like differential pricing come out in this as well, depending on the task as well. But it's still funny to me that we're still in a world. Obviously, it hasn't been released yet, but it seems to be we're in a per usage world at the moment. I think that will rapidly disappear when use cases come out. So, for example, they've got a few logos up on the OpenAI website of people using it, like Dropbox is one of them or something like that.
Yeah,
like,
and Duolingo and stuff, which we'll get into.
This is gonna. I think that they're not exactly paying per token. There's going to be service level agreements, etc.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm just going to flash something up on the screen here just to come back to these results real quick. Just let me know when you can see that.
Yeah.
I'm just zooming in. So one thing this is what I've got up on the screen here is kind of a bar chart of the results for comparing GPT-4 and other models with a 3-shot accuracy on the MMLU across different languages. The MMLU is the kind of benchmark for the machine learning models written, and it's benchmarked in English. So and I'll spell this out from an audio point of view so our listeners can follow along as well. In terms of accuracy with 3-shot, random guessing gets about 25%. Chinchilla in English, which is the Google model, gets about 67%. Palm in English, who developed Palm? I've forgotten.
I think Palm was also Google.
I thought it was Google too. Yeah,
it is.
It got 69.3%, and GPT 3.5 got 70.1%. GPT-4 then got 85.5% accuracy, which is the best on this chart. So that's 15 percentage points above GPT 3.5 and kind of 17-ish above Google's best. Now, what is interesting as well is they then took these questions that are all in English on the MMLU benchmarking, and they translated all of them into different languages. So they were still the same questions, but they were now in a different language, everything from Italian through to Afrikaans. And they then determined how GPT-4 would perform in these different languages. And what's interesting is that it's most accurate in English, which you can probably expect because that's its probably largest training corpus. But across the top, and they did it across, don't know the exact number, but call it like close to 30 languages. Across the top 20, it goes from 85.5% accuracy with English all the way down to 76.5% in Korean. 76.5% in Korean, and Korean isn't exactly the same alphabet as English. So I think that's just amazing. And obviously there's questions of how much of this training data is in their training set, etc. It's hard to tell. And like obviously whether once it had performed the test in English, was it then just cheating by doing it in another language, etc. But like, it's just amazing to see that these results held up. Like the delta across 20 different languages was 85. Like the range was 85.5 to 76.5%, including Korean, Turkish, Arabic, Greek, Russian, and Ukrainian, which are all different languages, like different alphabets as well. So very cool to see. I wonder if it is possible to get 100% accuracy on this stuff, and because the way we're trending, if we're adding 15 percentage points per GPT release, we're going to be getting at 100.5% accuracy next time around.
And I mean that works, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, very interesting. It's I'm really looking forward to some of these details coming out about what the actual structural differences between 4 and 3.5 were. It reminds me of all these tweets and LinkedIn messages that you saw, like probably early January, which was like GPT-4 is coming and it's going to be 100 trillion parameters and all this sort of stuff. And then like people just spread that news like crazy based on nothing.
Yeah.
And, you know, I found a tweet from a venture capitalist of all things, and it was like, you know, GPT will launch next week with more than 1 trillion parameters, and there's a photo of it with 100 trillion parameters. And I bring this up to just give people a bit of warning that just because you see this shit floating around, do a bit of digging, because as it turns out, somebody just made up this image, and as far as anyone knows, this is not true. And given how much GPU time, how many resources and everything else were required to train GPT-3, to think that in 6 months they did a 100x increase in the parameters and somehow just snuck it out, really should give people a bit more pause than I think it has.
Yeah. Be warned of the thread boys, is what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely. Although I've seen a lot of good memes, which is like GPT-5 will have 88 quintillion parameters and all this sort of stuff, and GPT-5 will have, you know, quantum parameters, and just making fun of this whole phenomenon of people just making shit up.
There's going to be like more parameters than atoms in the universe at some point very soon, where it's like GPT-6 will take 3 universes to train it.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny. But anyway, look.
The only thing, other thing that I wanted to mention on this as well is that like, is the parameters a good scale of progress?
I don't think. Well,
because to me, my understanding is that it's like if you had infinite GPU and GPU runtime, parameters isn't the endpoint that you want to judge progress on.
Yeah, I think it was for a while, but it isn't anymore. And if you look at the announcements around what they did for GPT-4, if it simply was we had more parameters, they would have released a paper that said we had more parameters. My gut says, from everything I've been able to find, it's more about human feedback, reinforcement learning, fine-tuning, selective, sort of contrastive learning, and things like that have improved the quality. Now, I'm sure there's slightly more parameters, but it's not just more parameters, more learning.
Yep.
So, yeah, we'll see. It'll come out eventually. And look, I have no doubt it got bigger. I just don't think it's, 1,000x bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty, shall we move on? Get out of the OpenAI ChatGPT GPT land?
Well, I mean, we'll take a very small step to the left in that our friends Duolingo released a new subscription tier this week powered by GPT-4 called Duolingo Max. So it's a subscription above their existing tier, which is called Super Duolingo. These guys probably
well, they now can't go above this. They're fucked. Yeah. They can't go another tier above.
No. But it gives learners 2 new features, which they describe as explain my answer and role play, which this whole thing reeks of like, please find a naming consultant. Super Duolingo Max roleplay? Come on. Anyway, so the way they work, explain by answer, is if you give an incorrect answer in one of the exercises, it will give you an explanation about the delta between what you said and the correct answer and help you learn, I guess, more fundamentally about the mistakes you've made, whether they're grammatical or misgendering a word or any of that sort of stuff, depending on what language you're learning. And roleplay is having a fake conversation with an AI in a different language. But
cool.
Intentionally aimed at somebody learning the language and with the context of what of the language you already know. So very cool, definitely. I think it makes a lot of sense for Duolingo's learner base. I didn't see anything around pricing, but I do think at some point the pricing is probably going to be prohibitive to people adopting these features. But we'll see. We'll see where that goes.
Yeah, no, it's cool. This is good application of AI, and it's good. It's good to see some use cases coming out of these large language models because it's powered by GPT, OpenAI, right?
Yeah. So they had a few different partnerships launched alongside GPT-4. Stripe Docs was another one, which is their sort of user documentation is GPT-4 generated. And yeah, this was one of them as well. Duolingo Max.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I picked up something slightly in the same vein as I was looking as well. Like Grammarly has now introduced Grammarly Go, which is basically assistant to help you write and craft things correctly with correct grammar, etc. But their selling point is that you can tune it to your specific writing style, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I think to me that's a big deal. And I think this is the product that everybody expected Grammarly to launch for like ever.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see they're coming out with it, because I think that the risk with what we'll talk about right after this, which is, Google and Microsoft throwing some AI into Microsoft Word and their email, is that within 6 months we will be sending AI-generated replies to AI-generated emails, and nobody will type anything anymore, and nobody will have any tone of voice, any individuality. It'll just be the most generic cookie cutter. It's like in those old school crime movies where people used to like cut letters out of a magazine and paste them on as a ransom note. It's basically that, but AI generated. Like there's just no identifying features of who originally crafted this text.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a good point to move on to this next bit of news, which is both Google and Microsoft have added to their Office suite a kind of Copilot-esque LLM ChatGPT equivalent to help you do everything from create PowerPoint decks with a short prompt and also summarize meetings for you and the recordings. And yeah, I see this and I just get stressed about the amount of stuff that I'm going to get sent that I'm probably not going to have time or care to read, because it's going to be like, I've seen ChatGPT's responses. They're real fucking long.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like this meeting could have been an email. It's like this AI-generated response could have been a text message. I think we're going to get really sick of this stuff really quickly. And it was so funny to watch these two side by side, because it's basically a slightly different branding of the exact same presentation.
Different font style, and that's about it.
Exactly. And it makes sense. Look, it's a logical next step. I don't think it's going to be the future of work as they have self-described it. That feature in Google Sheets to like analyze the sheet with AI and get insightful things has been there for ages, and it kind of sucks. Like,
this is the thing. This stuff needs to be perfect. Like, how many people do you know use Siri regularly?
Yeah. Really
not that many people. I'm probably like the biggest power user of Siri I know. And whenever I use it seem to use Siri in front of other people, I look like an idiot because she gets it wrong. Or like they get it wrong and like doesn't listen to me, or someone else's phone turns on when I say, "Hey Siri."
Yeah.
And you just stop using it because it's not perfect, because it's easier. Like if these meeting notes aren't, like, what will be cool, don't get me wrong, is you had a meeting and you'll try and remember that thing and then suddenly it's searchable. But I also think we're going to run into privacy issues on that, and people are going to be like, hey, can we turn off the AI so this isn't like get outside these walls, et cetera, et cetera. Like, there's a few things there, but like, this idea that like, I can make look at that, Siri turned on on my phone, just there. This idea that like, with a simple prompt, I'm going to be able to create a 12-point powered like PowerPoint slide. It's just like it's not going to happen.
No,
I don't see it happening easily soon, because like it needs to be perfect. Otherwise, you're just going to be like, stuff this, I'll do it myself.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I think if
how many sorry to interrupt, but how many times have you gone and taken someone's code? They're like, there's this application. Someone's written this code for me. I'm going to take it, and you take it, and you're like halfway through it, and you're like, oh my God, this just doesn't do what I need to do. I'm just going to start again myself.
Yeah, fairly often. And I think a good framework for this, for those considering this, is if you wouldn't Like right now, you could go online to Fiverr or Upwork or wherever else and pay somebody $50 to make a PowerPoint presentation for you. If you wouldn't do that because you'd think, oh, it'll be close, but it won't be quite right, it'll probably suck. The AI is not going to be doing a better job than that, I don't think.
No, I do not think. And I think the other issue that we run into here is like half the time we go and create collateral because it's our thinking process.
Yeah.
And we don't actually know what we're doing. Like, don't get me wrong, it's going to be great. Like, very specific things are going to be good with this, which is like create me a bar chart of everything in row 32 and column J.
Yeah. Yeah.
That'll be good. That'll be vaguely useful. Like, I see this stuff as like useful features, not products, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally agree. It'll find its feet. I'm sure eventually it will be extremely valuable, but the moment this turns on, it is not going to revolutionize everybody's PowerPoint presentation creation.
No.
It'll probably revolutionize the bottom 30% of PowerPoints to all look exactly the same. But other than that, I'm very skeptical.
And I think it's just one of these things as well, is like, even if it does do 100% of PowerPoints and like everyone's PowerPoint level gets taken to the next level, that means everyone's at the same level. There's no competitive advantage. And so then people will then be doing stuff on top of that to like provide additional value.
Yeah.
It's like when everyone got a computer, when everyone has a computer, having a computer isn't an advantage.
Yeah, totally agree. Look, it'll probably generate some cool templates, some new templates, new starting points, whatever. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I don't see it.
Yeah, I'm also skeptical because like I had like PowerPoint crash on me like 15 times this week from trying to load like our company's theme and like plug-in. Like, yeah. If you're trying to like do 100 trillion parameter inference via PowerPoint for my slide prompts, I'm excited to see you fix that for me, Microsoft.
Luck, Microsoft. Yeah, cool. So we'll wait and see on that one. I don't want to be a total downer about it. I think it'll find its feet, but the marketing around this stuff, like, it's crazy to see Google and Microsoft buy into the hype as much as everyone else.
Yeah, I think I'm negative on very general applications and people translating them to revolutionizing something. Like I think where this is going to revolutionize, and we're going to look back in 2 years and be like, whoa, is going to be very, very specific applications that speed us up. And one thing is like around research in, like, one part of my job is like research around financials, right? Like at the moment I'm sitting there Googling, clicking through 55 different tabs. Soon there's going to be some assistant that I can use, some Billy Bob equivalent that I can just jump in with and go, right, get me the last 4 quarters of Walmart's performance or whatever it is, and it will get it and it'll be perfect and it'll be great.
Yeah. No, definitely. Or, I've got 50 P&Ls from a bunch of different companies. Can you standardize these?
Yes.
That sort of stuff,
Yeah.
I think, will be handy. But anyway, let's move on to the next one, which is Google, finally, after a very long time and still not officially, have announced an API for Palm and a set of tools called MakerSuite. So to me, this is their first step towards doing what OpenAI did several years ago and opening up a bunch of their research for people to build on. You still can't get access to it. It's an announcement for an announcement, which will come out later to join a waitlist. But it's good news, I think, in the grand scheme of things. I mean, more tools, more competition is good. This Maker Studio, I think, from what I've gleaned, is a less developer-focused set of tools and a more... It's still technical. I won't call it non-technical, but it's for people to, say, drag in a bunch of documents from their Google Drive and start to build some tools on top of that and slap a UI over the front of it without needing to know how to code. So I'm looking forward to this. I think more competition in the space will be good.
Yep.
Google, I think, has a distribution advantage here for anybody on Google Cloud already. Maker Studio for anyone using G Suite already. Obviously, Microsoft Azure and 365 would be the equivalent for OpenAI, but it is one step removed. So, 6 months from now, it'll be interesting to see who's leading the pack here.
Yeah. Do you think they have a bit of an advantage as well with like their kind of relationship with developers in the AI and machine learning space as well? Do you believe that that provides a bit of an advantage to them?
Not as much as it once did. I think OpenAI is part of a different cluster of developer relations, sort of tangential to, say, Hugging Face and everything else. It's not quite as Hugging Face-esque as, say, Stability. And that, I think, would be more grassroots developer relationships. But OpenAI certainly isn't shying away from making stuff available. It's just a different way. It's APIs rather than access to code.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, shall we move on to the US Copyright Office?
Yeah, so a statement released this week from the US Copyright Office was clarifying their position around copywriting against AI-generated content. And the crux of the statement is that works that are generated by AI are not copyrightable.
Wow.
So, that's fairly... I mean, if you dig into it, it's fairly in line with their previous statements. But
feels very definitive in a good way.
Yeah, I agree.
It's clear.
I agree. And, there's some examples that I've seen tossed around with this article, which is if you write a children's book and you write the text, but AI generates the image, you can still copyright the text of that book, but the images themselves wouldn't be protected by copyright. And I think, their positioning on this is the purpose of copyright is to protect the intellectual property of a human being. So,
wow.
It makes it pretty clear cut. And it'll be interesting to see then, I guess on the flip side of this long awaited outcome from the Patent Office around whether using copyrighted but openly accessible content to train an AI is on the flip side a violation of copyright.
Yeah. Do you think this means as well then that code generated by Copilot equivalents would not be patentable?
Yeah, and that's the multi-billion-dollar question. Because traditionally, there's two types of copyright, right? There's registered copyrights and there's just general common copyright.
Protections.
Yeah. So if you write code and put it up, you are the copyright owner of that code.
But you rarely copyright code. I mean, you would patent the code, right?
You could patent the algorithm. Code is by default protected by copyright. The ideas within code and the algorithms themselves are sort of a separate thing to the code. So, look, it's going to be an interesting, let's be honest, 5 years as we get to the bottom of what the legal status of all of this is, given the new state of the world.
Wow. Interesting.
Indeed. So, it was a guidance piece. It laid down some definitive works. It wasn't a ruling against any particular case. So I'm sure there's still lots to be worked out in the wash. But
yeah, it'll be interesting to see the Stability Getty outcome.
Yeah.
Off the back of this, because that would prove one way or the other. Well, provide information one way or the other on how it is considered.
Yeah, definitely some interesting precedents. Yeah.
I wonder as well what this is going to do for AI artistry, where to gain protection, people will tweak it at the end as a human, and then you can claim it's human.
Well, that's it, and it becomes one of these things, which is how much do you have to be involved in order to, if you told the AI to generate a bunch of, let's say, stickers or stamps, and then you arrange those stamps in a creative and human way, where do we draw the line as to whether that's copyrighted or not? Time will tell. Time will tell.
Our AI judges will be able to figure that all out for us.
Exactly. So, next one on the docket here, I think, is a pretty funny one. I don't know if you're up to date with this, but Samsung in its latest generation of phones had this super resolution, take a photo of the moon and we'll use AI to make it better technology. And some skeptical internet users did a bunch of tests, and it turned out that all the AI did was try and find where the moon was in your picture, take a picture of the moon from its database, and just put it there instead. And so Samsung has released this article, which is like how they've done it. And it's basically, 30 minutes of reading to try and sweep under the rug that that's what they're doing. Yes, there's AI there to detect where the moon is, and there's a little bit of AI there to detect orientation and coloring and stuff. But at the end of the day, it's still just putting a picture of the moon. It's like...
It's copy and paste.
It's copy and paste. The only innovation here is where to copy paste, and should we make the moon a bit more yellow or a bit more white?
I really, really hope that someone on the internet has gone and tried to take pictures of things and trick the AI into making it think it's a moon.
Yeah, they definitely
and
did.
So it's just like you wearing sunglasses and it thinks you're sunglasses, and then it just pastes a moon on your face.
Yeah. People were generating like fake blurry moons on their computer and then taking a picture of their monitor, and then it would put a perfect picture of the moon there, but it was never the moon to begin with.
Yeah, love that.
And so, it just goes to show that there's a lot of bullshit out there.
The internet's the best. It goes to show.
That's true. That is a good takeaway here, is that the internet will find out. It's... you can fake the moon landing, but you can't fake the moon photo, as they definitely say.
Now let's move on to how a chief scientist tried to fool the ATO.
Yeah, so this is a fun one in the world of voice cloning. So there's a number of AI companies out there at the minute where you give them a snippet of your voice and then you can type in whatever you want it to say and it will generate a plausible replica of your voice.
Yeah, Meta released a really cool one of that, and we talked about it like 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah. So here in Australia, the ATO is the Australian Tax Office, and Toby Walsh, he is a scientist at the University of New South Wales's AI Institute. He cloned his voice and used it to bypass the biometric identification used by the ATO. So what that is you call up the ATO on the phone, and they ask you to say, I can't remember. There's some phrase that I'm not going to say. I almost said it. I know what it is. I'm not going to say it on a recorded podcast and then have any old bozo use it on the phone. But basically, you say, let's say it's, hey, presto, give me my tax boy. You say that into the phone. It does this thing it calls a voice print, and it lets you through the other side. If you fail, it does a bit of extra verification or it boots you out, depending on the scenario. But what he showed is that with a small snippet and with about 5 minutes of time, he was able to clone his own voice, feed that into a telephone talking to the ATO, and get access to his tax records, amongst other things.
Did he commit something illegal doing that for himself?
I think
technically,
it's probably a grey area because he accessed his own records. But certainly if you did this for somebody else, this would definitely be illegal. But doing it for yourself probably lets you get away with it.
Yeah, it's like that guy that discovered Tony Abbott's, one of our ex-prime ministers. This guy discovered the ex-prime minister's passport number because he posted an image on his Instagram account that let him basically track down some stuff and sign into his flight account or something like that and find out his passport. And then he realized, and this ex-prime minister is now technically a diplomat of Australia, and he just realized he had basically created some form, like performed minor identity fraud on a major international diplomat for the Australian government, and
cheeky
was
treason.
like, oh fuck.
Yeah. So, I mean, this one's crazy. It was definitely coming. The ATO and Centrelink have responded. Centrelink being the sort of welfare system here in Australia, amongst other things. They've responded and said, we have a number of measures in place to, ensure the high security of our system, but it's classic,
someone copied and pasted from the website for that.
Classic government response. But this makes me think of all those calls that you get. I don't know if you get these as well, where people just like try and get you to say a few words. It'll just be like a muffled voice being like, hello, hello, trying to get you to say, hello, is anybody there? That is like prime voice cloning spam.
Yep.
Get enough conversation on the phone for somebody to clone your voice and then use it for who knows what.
Yeah. I rarely pick up phone numbers that aren't saved in my phone anymore. And I'm probably going to stop doing that even more now. Where else are we at risk here? Like, Face ID protects a fair bit of my personal information because you can sign into my 1Password account with my Face ID, which is like all my credit cards, all my
Yeah, I think Face ID has a little bit of additional protection in that, at least the way it works on the iPhone, it uses the infrared sensor on the front of your phone and it waits for a bit of movement to try and ensure that it's not a static image of somebody's face. And it tries to get a bit of depth as well from that infrared camera to make sure you're not projecting like a screen and then using that. So there's a little bit of extra security there. I do think, though, in general, identity fraud and assuming the identity of somebody else is going to be something we need to become a lot more aware of and adapt to in a different way, given all this.
Yeah, I think like the traditional, just like how signature really isn't a form of security anymore, things that we thought were a form of identification are probably going to change over the next decade. Yeah,
absolutely. And there'll be a little bit of increased security for sure, and there'll be a little bit of the old, look, the security sucks, sure, but the penalty for you doing this is 50 years in jail. So do you really want to try and forge the signature? And I think that buys us
it's like opening mail, right? We've talked about this before.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, let's keep going. Next on the docket, one from the Discord this week, is Anthropic launching their rival to ChatGPT, Claude, officially out and about and in the world. It's a big LLM, ChatGPT style interface. Very, very cool. Anthropic, for those who don't remember, their big claim to differentiation was their, what do they call it? Constitutional AI.
Yeah, they're all about the safety.
Yeah, so they embedded a bunch of rules into the AI. They're 10 constitutional commandments where they use ridiculously waffly words like dismalfeasance and stuff like this to basically say don't do bad stuff. And they've claimed that this new AI is less likely to be gross and racist on the internet, I suppose. But at the same time that you can tweak those rules if your particular application requires a different set of ethics.
So if you want to create a racist, sexist sex chatbot. Yeah.
To me, it really probably underpins the fact that these ethics, these magical 10 commandments that they've given their AI is probably just like a light set of suggestions with a rough text match on the thing that you typed in, as opposed to anything hard and fast.
Can I add something in here, which is another thing on the docket, which is Microsoft laid off its entire ethics and society team within Microsoft AI this week.
Yeah. It's we talked about this a little bit on the Discord, but I really think we're in a stage now where all of these models are kind of crap and have massive flaws. But every time you release a new version, GPT-4, 3.5, Palm, Chinchilla, you reset the clock. You say, oh, yeah, that last one, that was garbage, but we got a new one. And then people spend about 6 months working out, oh no, it still sucks. It's still racist. It still can be tricked. And then you release 4.5 and say, no, trust us this time. Go again.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But yeah, thank you for Jens for bringing that one up from Anthropic and Claude. Have you chatted with it on Poe?
No, I haven't.
Because I have been chatting with Anthropic, on Poe, but that was a couple of weeks back, so before this.
Yeah. No, I have not played around with them too much, especially not enough to sort of contrast between the different models.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Moving on. Midjourney released V5 this week, which is cool. And I will also say we'll do a little plug for Midjourney as well. You might have noticed that the thumbnails are a little different on the YouTube videos for those playing along at home. And we've come to the conclusion that AI can probably create better thumbnails than Elliot and Tom.
Yeah.
So we've started creating our thumbnails with... I actually use DALL-E for mine just to mix it up. We'll... Trader. No, we're independent here, Elliot. We're independent here. Until someone sponsors us, we're
totally
independent. We are 100% for sale in this regard. But yeah, Midjourney, which produced our latest thumbnail, and who knows, might produce this one. Give it a go for... it has been released, and they've gone from much, much higher image quality. And God, like looking at some of the examples, like they're just stunning. Like there's this leaf with water droplets on it. Like it's just beautiful. Much wider stylistic range, it claims as well. And apparently it's got a much, much better understanding of the prompts as well. And it's got, and I think this is pretty big, and another nail in the coffin for prompt engineering. It has dynamic image prompting. So like you can kind of take the previous one and tweak it.
Good. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, having used Midjourney quite a bit, that was one of its more annoying features, is that you'd have to sort of copy paste your previous prompt, put it back in, and then redo.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely keen for that. I'll give it a go. I used it a little bit at work. So all of the major feature releases we have at work, I generate like a dumb Midjourney generated logo, and that just becomes the official photo for that feature release. The other thing that I saw for Midjourney or V5, is that it's good at hands now. Somebody said that the previous version of Midjourney, if you asked it to generate anything that had hands in it, it would be like 6 fingers, or the person has like 8 arms or something unnecessarily. So if you're into hands, Midjourney V5 is for you.
I remember from like some grade 8 art lesson that hands are like the hardest part of the body to sketch or something.
Yeah, I've heard similar things. So good on you, Midjourney, passing grade 5 art classes.
I sure as shit did.
No,
it.
me neither.
Good job to you.
Me neither. No, that's very cool. Midjourney it's a quiet underdog that I think is pretty interesting in amongst all of this.
They punch above their weight. Yeah. They're like, you know how we made the comparison to OpenAI versus Hugging Face. They are like the OG Hugging Face kind of OpenAI. Like I was just reading their website just before this as well. It's like, hey, we're a small team. We're self-funded. We just love AI. If you want to come work for us, we're hiring.
Yeah.
I was like, love that.
It's cool. And it's just like, it's a Discord that you can join, and you can do some prompts, and you can see what everyone else is doing. And underrated, I reckon, the old Midjourney.
Yeah. Yeah, moving on to something that Stanford released this week called Stanford Alpaca. So it's a large language model, and it's fine-tuned off Llama, which is, if you remember, it's Meta's model, which we kind of talked about last week. It's about a 7 billion parameter model, and they said it gets and this Alpaca version of it gets qualitatively similar results to OpenAI's Text DaVinci 3, which you gotta like, that just raises questionable flags to me, qualitative. But anyway, take their word for it for the moment, because that's not what I want to talk about. They claim that you can reproduce it for less than $600, which is pretty amazing for a 7 billion parameter model. And why do I care about this? I really am pretty bullish on the fact that the value from AI is going to be generated in super specific, super fine-tuned models that are doing very specific tasks that humans will never have to do again, because we just can't even compete with how good a model can do it.
Yeah.
There's been a few things, such as, if you remember last week, which was Chat Bio GPT or Chat Bio. Can't remember what it was called, but it was a very specific kind of like research synthesizer for biomedical papers. And they couldn't use they couldn't use GPT 3.5 because it was too damn big, and they had to go back and use some version of like some substrate of GPT 3 to do it and fine tune off that. And I kind of have this idea that for these fine tuning, there's going to be specific applications where you just cannot justify both the access cost and the training cost, and to some extent hiring the capability to be able to fine tune a model as massive as GPT 3.5 or let alone GPT 4. And so there's going to be this layer of AI which is based off these massive models, and the Dropboxes and the Stripes of the world are going to use these massive ones. And there's going to be this tier below where it's kind of a bit smaller, a bit scrappy, but you still want that level of accuracy, and it's going to be taken from models and fine tuned. And this kind of application kind of shows that to me. If you can whip up a fine-tuned model on a 7 billion parameter meta produced model, like for less than $600, that's a great place to start from, and like A, to create a product, or B, to even just create an MVP. Like, so I really think that there's going to be this kind of like layer of this layer to appear within the AI model world, especially in the LLMs, where it's these massive GPT-4's equivalents, and then there's this super basically like quick and dirty but still accurate fine-tuned smaller versions. And I think things like this, if you can produce it for $600, this is where like a lot of cool stuff's going to happen.
Yeah, you bet. I think this is awesome. I had some points in here, but I must have written over the top of them. But unfortunately for this team, they had a live demo and they've since taken it down, originally citing safety concerns around their live demo, and then they quickly updated the reason for their takedown to feedback from the scientific community has caused them to pull their demo flying. You can still get the how to reproduce this work, but it just goes to show that put anything on the internet and people will find a way to tell you that it's garbage.
Yeah. Then just the final thing on the news docket this week that got released, just in case we haven't talked about enough already, and we're already at a friggin' hour already. But Meta released something called Muavic, which is multilingual audio-visual corpus, and it basically seems to be a benchmarking corpus of data and capability for the combination of speech and audio translation. So video and audio, text translation and transcription. And what they say here is we use Meta's AV Hubert architecture, which is a model, to create end-to-end audio video speech recognition and audio video speech translation models. So they took a video of someone speaking and used both the audio channel and the video channel to translate and transcript those.
Cool.
Given an aligned pair of audio-video data, a model is able to process both modalities and fuse their representations into a unified space that can be used for either speech recognition or translation tasks. And if either modality is missing, AV Hubert can still process the available input modality, but with less efficiency.
That is very cool. Does it?
It is.
Let's say you have a video of somebody talking in English and you want it in French. Will it adjust the video?
No, it will just provide a translation of it as in text. Yeah. So it's video and audio to text in every scenario.
Yeah.
But what this has shown, so they did a little bit of comparison. It didn't really seem to perform very well compared to other translation models or transcription models, unless you put it in a noisy environment. And then it just wiped the floor clean of these other people. And like, sure, like I like it's cool that they got that they've been doing this, but to me, as I've mentioned already a couple of times this episode, this idea of combining data sources and data, like different versions of different input data. Like, and imagine what this will do, because like we're soon, like the next version of this, like the next version of GPT-4, and the next version of ChatGPT, we're going to be wanting to communicate with voice. We're going to be wanting to communicate with text, images, even website links. Like, we're going to be wanting to be able to communicate it in the way that humans do. And this is like, so I find this stuff very important. But also, we've talked about a bunch of amazing different things and models across the time here. But imagine what would happen if you combine an additional data source that humans generally have our ability to access, but that original algorithm didn't. And one example was when we were talking about weather prediction a couple of weeks back. And I remember you saying like it was accuracy on predicting weather in the next few hours. And we made the joke about, well, why don't you just go stick your head outside and see what it looks like?
Yeah.
This thing was incredibly accurate from a algorithmic point of view. Imagine layering on top of that a snapshot of the current actual real-time image of what the weather was doing, i.e. sticking your head outside and having a look up. Like what's going to happen to these models when you're suddenly not only filtering in hard complex numbers and equations, but also what we take for granted with our five senses as a human being.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think it's this is probably going to be a bigger theme this year of, going beyond just text to text or text to image, is trying to get truly multimodal. Yeah.
Very good, very good. Shall we move on? Dealbook.
All right. Similar to last week, lots and lots of stuff going on here, so we won't go too crazy in any of these in particular. We've got a ton of deals, a couple of new funds being raised, and some big rounds here. So number one off the bat, Adept raises $350 million in a Series B. So led by General Catalyst, Spark Capital, enterprise applications of text to text, as far as I can tell, general tasks for enterprise clients. So being able to ask it to, generate some conference material and just do big, general, boring work stuff by interfacing with existing software. So things like Photoshop or Airtable, just asking it to do weird business admin, from what I can see. Weirdly, both the co-founders left, and then they raised $350 million. So if anything signals that there is a lot of hype in the system right now, it's that the founders can leave and you can still keep raising tons of money, because usually that does not happen.
Yeah, and also $350 million, and I still don't really know what they're doing from a first use case point of view.
Yeah, that is definitely true.
You mentioned this probably 5 months ago. And the reason why I remember that is you're like, oh, I saw this thing that will like search all the houses for you in an area automatically. And that's still the use case video on their website.
Yeah. So seems cool, but I don't know. How much would you pay somebody to search a bunch of houses for you on the internet? Like $1?
Yeah.
$2?
Yeah. Well, I'm on the wait list, so I'll let you know when I'm off the wait list. But I think to me, this smells like a business which has a fantastic sales team that is able to walk into big companies like Adobe and go, what are your problems that you need automating? And we'll go automate them. We'll go build software to automate them for you.
Yeah. I think there's also probably some sentiment within the VC community that we're about to enter a stage of acquisitions and just pump these companies up, increase the value, and get a return.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair. Or the other thing as well here is that Founders Fund literally cut one of their funds in two. And the reason is they're like, we can't deploy this much money and exit within a 10-year period. We need to like pause on some of that money. So there's probably some companies there that are like, we just need to get this cash working.
Yeah, almost definitely. This next one on the docket, probably.
I was just gonna add to that as well. Is like, I'm really interested to see what Zapier is working on in the background here. Like,
true,
they are the leaders in this space of general automation and general integration of things. Surely they are working on stuff. Because they seem to be a pretty slickly run company as well. They did the opposite, where they've like raised one round ever and are worth like $1 billion, and they raised $5 million to date or something stupidly low because they've been profitable the entire time.
I mean, great company. Love Zapier. Love the work that they're doing. used it a whole bunch for a bunch of different things. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Being able to probably automatically create zaps from things seems like a pretty no-brainer type use case.
Yeah, exactly. You can see a world where Zapier is crawling all of their kind of plugins, being like, hey, would you like us to create this zap for your...
Yeah, exactly. Next one on the docket, Salesforce. So they've put together a $250 million fund to invest in generative AI. So they've made a bunch of investments to date. Cohere, Anthropic, which we'll get to in a second, one called Hearth.ai and one called U.com. So
Hearth.ai, I thought you would have owned that domain.
no, it's a pretty good domain name. And looking into it, it's like a tool to help you optimize your business networking with AI and connect you to the right people and help you remember to connect with them, which is like some dumb idea that you and I built as an app like 2 years ago. So it's funny to see that you can raise 50 to 100 million for that. But
yeah, if anyone wants to give us 50 to 100 million, we're still building that app, I swear.
yeah, definitely.
It's definitely got AI in it too.
Wasn't
the name of it like
Rekin,
like as in rekindle, which is kind of similar to Hearth as well. Anyway.
Exactly.
Did you go start this company without me?
No,
secretly
I did not. So yeah, Cohere, Canadian company. They describe themselves as providing access to LLMs and NLP through an API. Pretty basic stuff. U.com is a AI-driven search engine, so that sort of Microsoft-esque interface to large language models to ask it questions and have it help you find things. Pretty simple, well-trodden use case. So yeah, lots of money flowing around from Salesforce. So
I thought they just fired a bunch of people and were like,
I'm pretty sure
suffering revenue.
They did, yeah. Very strange, whatever. Again, probably just hoping for a quick buck.
Anyway.
Speaking of quick and bucks, I read this article and I thought, I swear we've talked about this. But as it turns out, they raised another $300 million. So that's Anthropic.
Yeah, it's because the last raise wasn't real money.
Yeah. So more money into Anthropic. Salesforce obviously being part of that, and a number of other funds. The article that I read this on Crunchbase said the Series B was led by disgraced FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried. So I found that funny. That I don't know, just that popped up as worth noting.
We literally talked about this like 5 weeks ago, and it was also the other co-founder of Adamantium. They both put in money.
Yeah. But, yeah.
Anyway, another
300 million. So $4 billion valuation apparently, which is absolutely bonkers. But yeah, look, good on them. The market's hot. Raise the money while you can, because it is not going to stay hot forever.
Don't do what Stripe did.
Well, I mean, yeah, they are raising another round to get some liquidity for their staff or whatever. So
no, they've done it, and they half their val. Yeah. And there's like people are saying that Stripe not IPOing is probably one of the biggest missed opportunities in history, because they were projected to IPO at 150 and they just raised 50 billion.
Oof. Yeah, that's tough. I'm sure they'll work it out. They're a good company, good revenue.
Look, there's still lots of billions. It's okay. They're doing okay.
A lot of zeros. A couple more. These two out of New York. An article I found from the team at Built in NYC. Amelia, which is the name of a company, not a person, raised $175 million. They claim to transform the latest conversational AI innovations into enterprise-grade software, which honestly could be a copy and paste description of almost all the companies on this list. So we're going to probably need to see some differentiation here. But, good on them. Again, do chatbots and enterprise-grade software, and you can raise, apparently.
Safely navigate the high-profile chatbot news cycle in the merging AI age.
Yeah. I don't know, man. People are using words. I don't know what half of them mean, and I know this space pretty well. it's a funny time.
Don't worry, you can just ask ChatGPT what it means.
True. Another one out of NYC, Candidly, raised $20.5 million. So it's a fintech company that you previously probably didn't really identify that much as an AI company, but now they are all about AI to identify optimal strategies for users to repay their student loans. I don't even know really what that means or why you need AI to do that. But I mean, obviously student loans in the US, big industry. But I don't know. This one feels a little bit like, hey, if we can rebrand to say AI, we're going to get a bunch of money come through the door, and seems to be the way.
Yeah, our AI is actually an if statement, but it's got AI.
Yeah. But hey, more deals, more money, more jobs for people in this sector. So if you're an AI engineer or AI adjacent type role, there's probably some pretty good roles for you out there at the minute, which is always fun.
Yeah.
This one was an odd one. So Humane, this was a TechCrunch article that came out, I think, just after we released the last episode. They raised another $100 million. They describe their company as integrated device and cloud services platform for AI. The two founders are, I think, married to each other. I remember reading in the article. They've filed some patents about body-worn devices and laser projection systems, and I don't know. But people are pretty skeptical. Like, they haven't released a product. They haven't released a demo. They use a bunch of, like, Apple-esque waffly words, except unlike Apple, they don't back it up with anything.
Yeah, they haven't released the iPhone yet. So
Exactly. And I don't know. It feels like the fact they just call themselves ex-Apple design employees, and therefore they can just do whatever they want, and it'll probably end up being like a failed Kickstarter in 3 years.
Yeah, good. I just saw as well, I thought it was 17.5 million raised by Amelia in New York for navigating high-profile chatbot news cycle stuff. No, it's 175
million.
Jesus.
That's a lot of money. Yeah.
That's a lot of... Yeah.
I mean, all of these investments cannot get $100 billion exits. Like, it's just...
Well, I just did the maths on, like, this week alone. There is $945 million of US, I assume, of investments on this page today.
That's a lot.
There's in a week, $1 billion on companies I have never heard of, and I literally spend 2 to 4 hours a week searching the internet for AI-related news.
Yeah. Crazy times, man. Crazy times. So, last couple on here, less individual companies, more big movements. Tell me about South Korea.
Yeah, they're not real deals, but two really interesting things that I came across, which is South Korea government has decided to build and Samsung, which is basically the 90% of Korea GDP, it seems. But South Korea government and Samsung are building the world's largest chip center in Seoul for $230 billion of investment.
That's a lot of zeros.
Now, yeah, but so it's over 20 years, the $230 billion, and it's actually not that unreasonable from a capex point of view that Samsung already spends. But they're building it, and this is also like a bit of a response into all of the US onshoring like things that came in because Korea doesn't want to lose it. At the moment, it's Taiwan and Korea that produce semiconductors and also chips, and so they don't want to lose that status. So they're investing. And they're also going to be building the world's largest semiconductor manufacturing complexes there as well. So,
very cool.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
So we might be seeing Samsung chips as a major, and semiconductors as a major competitor moving forward. And then the next one I came across is the UK government is investing £900 million on a supercomputer as part of their AI strategy. And we talked about this at the prediction episode this year, which is nationalized AI infrastructure and models. And I'll just quote from this, which is, "We think there's a risk that we in the UK will lose out to the large tech companies and possibly China and get left behind in the areas of cybersecurity, healthcare, and so on. It is a massive arms race that has been around for some time, but the heat has certainly been turned up most recently." And this is the Chief Data and AI Officer speaking to the Commons Science and Technology Committee. So yeah, they're going to build an exascale computer. There's only one other exists in the Frontier Labs in Oak Ridge, in USA. So yeah, and it's going to be a dedicated national resource for AI. So
that's cool. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, with Brexit and all that, I think the UK probably needed to find a way to get some sort of useful export. They're sort of sitting out there on their own a little bit. I know things are a bit rough economically for them at the minute. So very cool. I mean, I definitely think we'll see more of this. I'd like to see something like this happen in Australia. We have a good history of sort of large supercomputer setups here in Australia. Help us move away from just digging up rocks and selling them to other countries. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We're going to see more of this.
Yeah. Whew. That's it.
That was a
We're
big
done.
episode.
I know, that was a 2-beer episode.
It was. Well, a beer and a water in my case, but I'm sure for anyone listening, that was a 2-beer episode. And speaking of, thank you everybody who's still around at the 1 hour 20-minute mark. That is a big investment, one of our longer episodes. It was a big week, but it's been great to have you. Thanks, Tom. It's been a lot of fun, as it always is. And subscribe, do all that good sort of stuff. Hit us up in the Discord. Post any comments, questions, interesting links that you find there. And until next time.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode. If you're liking this content, make sure you subscribe and like so we keep on going. And if you have any questions, make sure you hit us up on Twitter, join our Discord, or leave them in the comments below. Thanks again.